In this video, I'm going to talk about strength training. I'm also going to bust some myths about what some of the pros are doing at the moment, which looks really cool and trendy, but is absolutely pointless. Yeah, I'm talking about these things. So keep watching because I'm going to give you a template of what you can put into your strength training, what works, how to place it, whether you should place it in front of your cycling training or behind it, what type of loading you need to do, whether that's body weight or starting to lift heavier, or even if you should be lifting heavy at all. I know it's confusing, right? But there's a lot to get through, so let's get into it. You have to be living under a rock if you don't know that strength training increases muscle function, quality, and size. And also to not understand that as we get older, we start to lose muscle function, quality, and size if we don't train it. Training is the thing that holds onto it and gives us our strength and power longevity. Yes, cycling is going to help us hold on to it. But here's the kicker. Cycling is non-weight bearing, and that has a real problem for creating force in the muscles, real force, and also force on the bone. And that means you're basically, if you're riding a bike, you're gonna start developing brittle bone disease if that's all you're doing. Strength training as a master cyclist, I think, is an absolute foundation for your ability to stay very effective on a bike. It's something I've been doing pretty much most of my life. And I know when I get tired, I can rely on the fact that I am strong, and there's a huge foundation underneath that just keeps plugging away at putting power out, where you can see other people that don't hit the gym are really struggling. Let's bust some myths, because the pros are doing this a lot and they're using bands, and there's also people on Instagram and influencers saying, hey, look, use these bands, activate everything, this will make you strong. And here's the thing, they don't. For strength training, you need to recruit reliably 60 to 70% of your muscle motor units to create enough mechanical tension to create strength. And to really drive the muscular and neural adaptation, you need about 75 to 90% of your 1 rep max to actually recruit the muscle motor units to drive that adaptation you're looking for. Now we have to change our mindset a little bit, because strength training and hypertrophy, so the building of lean muscle mass, are similar but also slightly different. So you can still build muscle as low as 30 to 40% of 1 rep max. But the crucial thing to think about here is strength and building muscle mass here at this percentage needs to be taken to a point where you're working to near failure. For strength training to really work, the key point to get across is you need to create muscular tension. And that basically means is how much force you're putting through the muscle fibers. And muscle damage, because you need to damage the muscle, because when you do that, the muscle has to refashion itself, and that's how it builds. So yes, a higher protein diet matters, but we're not talking about that today. Now, I can hear some of you saying, but what about body weight and dumbbells and maybe things like Pilates? For untrained individuals or people who aren't that strong, using these types of training can work. But for stronger athletes, you're going to need to manipulate either tempo, or you're going to have to manipulate the number of reps you do to really take your training to almost failure. And here's the problem with that. That's going to create lean muscle mass for sure. But the problem with that is that it's not actually driving enough force through the muscle to create real strength gains. And that's because the load or the weight you're putting through your body isn't anywhere near your 1 rep max. And remember, I was talking about to drive real strength training adaptations, you need high loads, typically about 75 to 90% of your 1 rep max. So realistically, if you want to build a more robust engine, a more powerful engine, a really strong climbing engine, you need to hit the gym and you need to start thinking, I need to lift with a real purpose. Now, here's the cool thing. Your strength training does not need to be sexy. It does not need to include deadlifts and squats. And that means you don't need a lot of skill to get into the gym and start making progress with your strength gains. So for the beginner, what would I recommend? Well, it's really straightforward. Leg press. You need to do some chest press and some seated row. If you do a chest press, that's working your triceps at the same time, so you don't need to do individual tricep work. And any pulling is going to work your biceps, so you don't need to do any bicep work. That's going to save you time and it's going to start getting you stronger. Single leg work is, in my book, a really good thing to put in. Trust me, you will, when you start that, you'll realize that actually you're quite weak on one leg compared to the other. And this is where it doesn't need to be sexy, because you can do single leg work on a leg press, and then you can do both feet together. You don't need to move around, you just need to challenge the body. But what about movement pattern work and functionality training? You hear a lot of buzzwords flying around the internet about this. Should you actually put that in too? Well, yeah, you can. And you can put that at the start of a strength training session, even as part of a warm-up. So I'm never a big fan of getting on a rower or jumping on a treadmill to do a warm-up. I think that's pointless. Personally, when I get my athletes to go into the gym, I get them to do things like walking lunges or step-ups with dumbbells or two-handed dumbbell squats or pick-up squats, or even, this is the cool thing, use these. And this is where your bands come in handy. That's what these are for improving neuromuscular and movement patterns, so you're priming the body to really start working. Plus, it's going to warm you up, so you're going to reduce the chances of injury. So they are really good for warm-ups, activation drills, and getting ready for lifting the heavy stuff. Let's talk about reps and sets. Well, look, here's the thing. When you first get started, you are going to experience some muscle soreness. So you want to start at a moderate weight. Yes, I know I've been talking about loading the muscle and thinking about 1 rep max and really challenging yourself in the gym. But to start there, to start off with, I can guarantee you're going to get so much muscle trauma that even sitting on the loo the next day is going to feel a massive task. So it really depends on where you're starting from. In experience, sometimes I get my cyclists to do 2 sets of 10 repetitions at a moderate load, working through a range of motion. That is enough. But if someone's more experienced, then you can start them off back in the gym doing 3 sets of 10 to 15 repetitions. I know that sounds classic, but what we're doing over that time to start off with is condition them to put them into a place where we're making sure that the tendons and joints are ready to start lifting heavier later on. Now, bear in mind, it takes anywhere between 10 and 12 weeks of consistent strength training, seeing progression through your strength training, to sort of condition your tendons and joints to be able to deal with greater forces later on. This is why I think it's so important for us to keep it in view, not just for the winter, but all year round. Because again, if you don't use it, you lose it. And then you're always in that cycle of sort of strong, not, but you're never improving. A few things I often get asked is, where should I put my strength training? Should it be before my bike or after my bike? Well, look, the science would suggest that there is a way that we should do it. But the evidence is, let's say, weak at best at supporting it. But here's the thing. From experience, I always think, if you can get your bike training done first and then your strength training done second, it often feels better that way. And then when you look at the science, it would suggest that if you do your bike training first and then your strength training, the cycling training that you do augments the adaptation from the strength training, and then you're not going to blunt the strength training adaptation from the cycle training. Whereas if you do it the other way, it's not so optimal. But here's the thing. This is a cool thing to get across. If you do your bike training and don't do any strength training, you're not going to get any adaptation at all. So do not stick it in where you can. Just try and keep it as far apart from each one as you possibly can. And if this video has got you thinking, I really want to get started back in the gym and make it a priority, then this video is going to help you do just that.